another video. Hello. So for me it's Monday, for you it's Wednesday, hopefully. Domain expansion? No, okay, focus. Yeah, it's Monday. I'm tired, and like everyone else I know is tired, so like let's all just be tired together. Which, it's actually dumb that I'm tired because I literally woke up, ate breakfast, did like a load of laundry, ate lunch, and now here I am and I'm tired. Like, I did nothing today. Hello everyone, my name is Zarina, and welcome back to whatever this video is going to become. Today, I'm bringing you the books I read in March. Yay, okay, yeah, it's still September. It's currently the last week of September, which is honestly crazy that I've managed to sit down 2 weeks in a row to film a video. Well, I'm really proud of myself on that one. On that one. Yeah, I'm bringing you all the books I read in March. So in March, I had a pretty busy reading month. I read 13 books. Well, there's like a caveat. One of them, caveat? There's an asterisk, that's what I'm gonna say. There's an asterisk next to that 13, because one of those books got DNF'd. And it's actually quite surprising that I think I DNF'd that book, because it's a pretty popular book. When I get there, you'll see why. However, my phone, I edit videos on my phone and download them, and like the most they can be is about 20 minutes, and just because I had like 7 books for February, and that's about 20 minutes, and then for this month, I have 13. I'm gonna split into 2 parts. I'm gonna do the first like 6 or 7 in this video, and then there's gonna be a part 2, so yay! If I do end up doing a part 2, I'm probably posting that on Sunday, so I have time to edit and add captions and everything. So if all 13 books are in this one, don't worry about it. If they're not, see you Sunday for those. Let's get started. So for this month, I don't actually have quite a few of these books. I read, they were library books, so we're just gonna have to imagine them. Just because I don't really, like, I know how to edit pictures. I don't know, it's fine. We're gonna use our power of imagination to imagine the covers of these books, which is really unfortunate because most of the books that I don't have are not really like popular books where you can just see them. Yeah, but we're gonna go with it. I'll put the title and author up here so you can at least look it up without trusting my pronunciation of authors' names. Okay, now let's actually get started. I read quite a bit of nonfiction this month, which is crazy because like I don't ever really read nonfiction. But the first book I read for this month was called But You Don't Look Autistic by Bianca. Last name is spelled Toeps. Yeah, and basically the entire book is kind of like her personal stories of being autistic. I think if I'm remembering correctly, she was late diagnosed autistic. Her stories of like struggling beforehand and the mental health issues that comes with being neurodivergent and not having a diagnosis, and then like having to learn how to unmask and deal with your mental health diagnosis, basically. If I'm also remembering correctly, there's stories from other people who are autistic talking about their own personal experiences, as well as some advice at the end where it's for like people who are not autistic who happen to be reading the book. I really enjoyed it. I feel like this book was really interesting because I feel like a lot of times when people talk about autism, they themselves, I mean, it's less so with TikTok, but like in more traditional media, so like film, TV, books, people with autism are not really the people writing the characters, or you have to kind of like infer that a character has autism, versus like this is a book, even though it's nonfiction, it is coming from someone who doesn't. The book is coming from someone who has autism, so like it's definitely a very different perspective. I feel like a lot of people have a very narrow view of like what autism can be viewed as, just because one, maybe not knowing people in their personal life who have autism or who have like are autistic and they talk about their autism, and also having traditional media, again like film, movies, and TV that have such, or either not written by people who are autistic, or having such a very like narrow view. I feel like it's really important. That's what I was trying to say. That's I'm blabbering on, but I really enjoyed it. I rated it 4 stars. It was really good. I think I got a little bit bored at some parts, but like, it's me, when do I not get slightly bored when I'm reading nonfiction books? It was overall really good. It was really short. It was, I think, like less than 200 pages. So it's just a really good, quick read. And it's not very like scientific-y. So like, it's definitely more, if you're someone who connects more with like personal stories, this book it'll give you that. Yeah, it was a good time. Next. The next book was also a library book and also poetry, which is not something I really touch at all. Sorry, I have to read this. It's called If They Come For Us, Poems by Fatimah Asghar, I believe is how you pronounce the name. Again, it will be up here because I can't pronounce things. This one I ended up giving a 5 stars. It was a very emotional grouping of poems. It has to do with the author, the writer. Is it writers for poems? I'm gonna go with writer. That could be incorrect. The poems talk about her, like, growing up as a Pakistani Muslim woman in the United States, especially after 9/11. I cried through most of them. They were good. I don't know what else to say. I don't usually read poetry, so I don't really... They were really good. It was a poem collection. It's all by her. And, yeah. Okay, next. The next book is actually something I do have in my possession, and that is The Atlas 6 by Olivie Blake. Olivie Blake? I swear I hear this name on TikTok all the time, and I just even one ear out the other, man. I cannot pronounce things. If you don't know, this book is about like magicians who've been like brought in to this secret society to be like, I think the next guardians, this like secret library thing, and there's 6 of them, but there can only be 5 of them. So like they're competing to see who is going to be the 5. So I was genuinely surprised because I've heard such good things about this and the rest of the series, but like it sucked so bad. It was probably by far like one of the most painful books I've read this year. I was literally fighting for my life to finish this book. So many of the characters are so unlikable, and for like no reason. Like they could just choose to be better people, but they're like already like super terrible people, and like I don't care. I like literally did not care about any of them until approximately like the last 100 pages of this book. I don't know, it just felt so randomly long. Like I feel like at least 200 pages could be taken out of this book and it still makes sense, and it should have. Yeah, I annotated this one. I believe there was 3 female main characters, and like 2 of them I couldn't stand, and then one of them I just didn't know anything about. So it's like I didn't have any strong emotions about her, which was fantastic. That's a lie, that was sarcasm. I have heard that the second book is a lot better, but like if your first book is bad, why am I even gonna read the second one? Like I don't care that so many people have said it's good. I literally do not have the energy to read through it. Also, this book, like the language used is just so pretentious for like no reason. It just literally feels like the whole book is just kind of yelling at you like I'm smarter than you. And like I get the like academic setting. I think that's one of the things that almost threw me off the edge of like not finishing this book, was like the fact that the language was just so, it felt like reading someone's work in like 6th grade who just found out what a thesaurus was, and they were just gonna use like big words and like sentences to confuse you, but to think they're smart. You know what I mean. That's what it felt like. I hated it. I like could not stand it. Before doing this video, it's been sitting on the shelf because I was like, okay, I'll get the next one. But honestly, thinking about this book has made me so angry in this moment. I don't think I'm gonna continue the series. I have so many other things to read. Like, one of my personal pet peeves is when people are like, the second book is better, the second book is better. Yeah, like I get the second book is better, but like don't make me suffer through reading the first book to get to the second book. Like that's not the point. Like the first book is supposed to be good. That's actually a lie. I would prefer to read a bad first book and then have the ending be better. But at the same time, all the books should be good. Yeah, so that's a lot of thoughts. Oh, did I rate it? I ended up rating it a 3.5 stars. I did finish it. I remember the end being satisfying. So literally this book is like 400 pages. I might move the rating down to 3 stars. What am I saying? I'm so angry at this book that I'm like actively losing my train of thought. The last 50 pages were good, but I had to suffer through like 350 pages to get to that like 50 pages. Like it did not need to be that long. I'm like, I'm getting hot. I need to take off my jacket. I'm just anyway, next book. This next book also makes me angry because it's the one I DNF'd. Yay! The next book that I read for the month was The Hidden Power of Effing Up by the Try Guys. I unfortunately could not get through this book. I give it 1 star. It is by far one of the worst popular books I have read. I am a fan of the Try Guys, or actually, yeah, I still am a fan of the Try Guys. I don't watch a lot of their content like actively now, but I still like will stumble upon their videos from time to time. Oh, it was really funny because this copy is a library book, and like not on the cover, but like in some spots in the book, he who shall not be mentioned was like crossed out with marker on some of the pages. It was really goofy. So I have read a few YouTuber books in my days. I've been deep on the YouTube internet trenches since like 2012, when I was allowed to have an iPad and like watch YouTube. I have read through Joey Graceffa's book, Dan Howell, Stacy Plays, which Minecraft YouTuber I used to watch like religiously. I've read a couple other books. Those are just the ones that are coming out of my head. Their job is to be on camera, not necessarily to be writers, and I understand that. However, unfortunately, the Try Guys book absolutely sucked. I believe like Keith wrote most of the sections, which like it was okay, you know what? I don't necessarily think it was terrible. I just think I also know from watching their content that like this book came out really fast, and like they were doing most of it themselves. They had never written a book. They were trying something. Most people who are writing a book are trying something. Are trying to write a book. I understand, like, it's a YouTuber book. Like, I'm going in with much lower expectations. However, one of my personal pet peeves is when you're reading a book and, like, the writer is like, I am the all-knowing person and I am telling you blah, 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 blah. And basically, yeah, like, where the author is just like, this is what I learned from the experience, so this is what you should learn too. It just, in my head, it just immediately goes to very, like, feels very propaganda-y. Like, propaganda, yeah, that's what it literally feels like, where they're just like, and because I've done this. And it just made me, like, the entire time I was reading the book, I could not forget about the internet, like, parasocial relationships. While I was, like, sitting there reading this book, I was just like, there are genuinely people reading this book who are reading this for, like, because they believe that these people know these, like, I don't know, it just felt so weird. It just felt like, I don't know, I just didn't really understand it. I was really annoyed the whole time. And so I think I got only till, I'd have to look it up, but my phone is recording. I only really got like 2 or 3 chapters in because the writing just was driving me nuts. I couldn't do it. Like, I love the Try Guys, but yeah. So I DNF'd it. That was my first DNF for the year. Sorry. Okay, next book. Would it be a me describing books video if I ever had a complete thought? So from the Try Guys book, which was very sadly a disappointment, I have probably one of my favorite books that I've read this year so far, and that is A Snake Falls to Earth by Darcie Little Badger. First of all, we're just going to talk about how gorgeous this edition of the book is. First of all, it's like surprisingly heavy, like it's pretty solid, and the paper just like feels so smooth and so nice, and like for a hardcover, it just like flops, which is crazy. And then also like the stunning art, yeah, and like the paper, you can't really see, no, it's like snake imprints on it, which makes a lot of sense when I describe this book. This book, it was such a fun time. It really reminded me, so I don't say this lightly, if people who know me know how big the Lightning Thief and the Percy Jackson series was to me in like middle school, and this book felt like reading The Lightning Thief for the first time. Just something about like the storytelling and the way it's put together and the feeling of the characters, like not like that they're like, oh, it's Percy and anime, blah blah blah. The feeling of meeting these characters and getting to know them had the same feeling. Like, I'm so attached to them. I love them so much. Like, so this story takes place, is written in a Lipan Apache storytelling structure, according to the description of the book online. I think that's what really adds to the element that gave me the same feeling as The Lightning Thief, because The Lightning Thief was originally written to mimic the feeling of Greek epics, I believe. Oh my god, why am I forgetting? Oh my gosh, is it the Iliad or the Odyssey? I'm forgetting. But like basically Percy's journey is mimicking like an old Greek hero's journey, and like that's where we get certain aspects in the story, and you can feel it in the way The Lightning Thief is told. And though I don't know, this is a story that the author came up with, but the storytelling structure has that very old feeling to it, where like you can tell that it's important, I guess, is the way I can explain it. Yeah, like you can just like feel the story in your chest is like the best way I can describe it. I don't know, like you're reading something a lot bigger than the book itself, if that makes sense. But the way the story takes place is also super interesting, because half of it is happening in the human realm and the other half is happening in the spirit realm, and like the two main characters don't really meet until like towards the end of the book. And though it's I like can't say too much without spoiling like what this book is about, but it's so good. Like it's middle grade too. It's super easy to read. I couldn't put it down. It's a beautiful book. I cannot wait to read more by this author. It's so good. Like I don't want to put it down. I just want to hug it, because it was just that's the best way I can explain it. Just like I can't even have a full sentence, because like I'm just remembering reading the book, and it's like Snake Foster's, I gave it a 5 stars. Clearly, for the fact that I can't have a thought, but I gave it 5 stars. It was so good. And it was middle grade too, which surprised me, because like I've had an on and off relationship with middle grade for a while. The next book I read was One for All by Lillie Lainoff. This book is like online marketed as like a gender bent musketeer retelling, and the main character suffers from postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I pronounced that completely wrong. You can look it up. But she suffers from POTS, and the story is her trying to become a musketeer, but also dealing with it mainly focuses on like her story trying to become a musketeer, but of course because of her illness and her disabilities, like it also factors into being a major part of the story, which was also really fun to read, because I feel like a lot of times, especially in fiction stories, this one didn't have magic, but a lot of times like the problems were magic to write off a disability. Like all of a sudden, like this blind character who can't see has this magic power that lets them see, like is it basically, or like, oh, they can't walk, but like something magically fixes the issue. I feel like that happens a lot of times in fiction books, even if it's... Oh, a good example of that is the Graceling books, the first one by Kristen Cashore. I know she's actually... that author has spoken out about her mistake and learning more about disability, but it happens a lot. And it was interesting to read a book that didn't do that. I ended up giving it a 3.75 stars. However, unfortunately, I think I did rate this one a little bit higher because the writing was really, really difficult to get through. However, I'm trying to take into consideration a little bit the fact that this is the author's debut novel. So there's that. And like the story was fun. It's just like, I just remember thinking like half of it could have been cut out, and like still, not half, maybe like good like chunks of stuff could have been like toned down a little bit. Like there was a little bit of over explaining, and I was like, I get it, thank you. But overall, it was a good book. I think also a really interesting feeling that I think this book does well is like when someone has a chronic illness, feeling of like being annoyed with your own body, how it like doesn't always do what you want it to be doing. Like you feel like you should be able to do this, but like because of your chronic illness or your disability, you're stuck. And this book does such a good job of like that feeling. It's well written in the ways that matter. It just made it a little bit more difficult to enjoy from a craft standpoint, if that makes sense. Like there was nothing actually like wrong with the story at all. It's just the wording was driving me bonkers. It was driving me crazy. Okay, the last book for this video I do actually have on me. The Duke and I from the Bridgerton series. I've been watching Bridgerton since it started, and this year, in anticipation for season 3, I was like, I'm gonna read the books. If you do not know anything about Bridgerton, Bridgerton is a Is it Regency? Some people who like historical periods are gonna be mad at me, but I believe it's Regency. The TV show is based off these books, which are, like, the main series is 8 Regency period romance stories following the 8 Bridgerton children. All of them are named, like, alphabetically, so Anthony A is the first one, B, Benedict, C, blah 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 blah. And this first one follows Daphne, the 4th child to the Bridgertons, as she goes through her debut in society. I'm not gonna lie, I did watch the show before I read this, and they're pretty spot on. Like, the story follows decently closely. There's some information in the book that I feel like was communicated better, and then I feel like there's some stuff in the show that was communicated better. I don't like the story of season 1 or book 1. Like, I do enjoy Daphne's character, but I don't know, it just, actually that's a lie. I didn't really like this one. This is definitely not one of my favorites. I've finished the Bridgerton series now. This is not one of my favorites, and, like, it's okay. Yeah, I gave it a 3, like a 3-star rating. It's a romance book. It exists. I think what's also really difficult is, like, with the show already being out versus the book, there's a lot of things in the show that are more interesting because they've added POC characters and different storylines and been able to add multiple layers versus, like, the books were written, like, one at a time, mainly focusing on this. And I just think I enjoyed the accumulation of the TV show better than this, mainly because I just don't like Daphne's story. I like Daphne later on. It's just in her book, I'm like, please, let's not do this. I think also some of the things they argue about are so dumb. Also, it's really funny because the Netflix people are on the front, but how he is described in this book is very different, which threw me off. But in my head, I was like, I kept seeing him, and they were like, ice blue eyes, and I was like, what? We made it to the end of the video. The other half of the books are gonna be later. I honestly cannot believe I read this much in March. I just remember I think my thesis was due during March. So I was procrastinating so hard, I was reading so much. Plus a bunch of my library books were due. I think that's why I read so many library books in that moment. But yeah, also part 2 has a lot more of the books that I actually own. So if you got tired of me holding up air, part 2, man. So I guess I'll see you then. Bye bye. Posture, orthostatic syndrome? I don't know what it said. I guess if I'm ever tired, this is only 50 pages of the book were good. Or like 150, no, 50 pages. Like the last 50 pages where rolling chair is rolling places I do not want it to roll.